Every few weeks, it happens again. Headlines explode. Screens light up. Numbers grow so large, they stop feeling real. Someone says the jackpot is historic, record-breaking, life-changing. And suddenly, millions of people who rarely think about the lottery feel something pull at them. Not logic, not probability, hope. Powerball is not just a lottery. It is one of the most aggressive, successful hard pitch systems ever created. And it doesn't rely on persuasion in the traditional sense. It relies on pressure, psychological pressure, cultural pressure, emotional pressure. It sells an idea so powerful that people willingly ignore the math. This is not an accident. Powerball hard pitching content is engineered to bypass reason and go straight for desire. It doesn't ask whether winning is likely. It asks whether you can afford to miss the chance entirely. That distinction is everything, because modern life has created the perfect environment for this kind of pitch to thrive. People feel capped. Careers feel limited. Progress feels slow. Systems feel immovable. For many, the idea of incremental improvement feels almost insulting. Against that backdrop, Powerball doesn't offer improvement. It offers escape, total escape. Hard pitch Powerball content is not subtle. It is intentionally overwhelming. It floods attention with massive numbers, countdowns, dramatic language, and repeated reminders that this moment matters more than ordinary moments. It reframes a recurring drawing as a once-in-history opportunity. And it works. The pitch never says, "You will win." That would break the illusion. Instead, it says, "Someone will." And in that space between those two ideas, imagination takes over. The content invites viewers to mentally place themselves into a future where everything changes at once. Debt disappears. Time opens up. Stress dissolves. Respect follows. The details don't matter. The feeling does. Powerball hard pitching content is built on emotional compression. It takes years of frustration, boredom, exhaustion, and financial pressure, and compresses them into a single question. What if this fixes everything? That question is far more powerful than any statistic. This is why the most effective Powerball content rarely focuses on odds. When odds are mentioned, they are framed abstractly, humorously, or dismissively. The real focus is scale. How big the jackpot is, how rare this moment is, how many people are talking about it. Bigness replaces probability, and bigness is persuasive. The hard pitch also relies heavily on urgency. Even though Powerball returns again and again, each draw is framed as final. This one is different. This one is massive. This one won't come back the same way. Miss it, and you missed history. Urgency creates pressure. Pressure collapses deliberation. Deliberation is the enemy of impulse. This is why Powerball content spikes right before drawings. The goal is not to inform early. The goal is to capture people at the exact moment, when imagination is most active and resistance is weakest. Another critical element of the hard pitch is social proof. Powerball content constantly reminds viewers that millions of others are participating. Office pools, family tickets, friends talking about numbers. When everyone else is imagining a different life, opting out starts to feel like self-exclusion. No one wants to be the person who didn't play when everyone else did. The hard pitch quietly reframes participation as normal and abstention as risk. This is where Powerball becomes more than gambling. It becomes cultural ritual. Buying a ticket is no longer about expectation. It's about permission to imagine. For a few days, people allow themselves to mentally leave their current lives. That permission has value. Hard pitch Powerball content sells that permission relentlessly. It uses language that is intentionally absolute, life-changing, unbelievable, insane, historic, once in a lifetime. These words are not meant to be evaluated. They are meant to be felt. Rational thinking slows emotional response. Hard pitching speeds it up. The pitch also exploits contrast. Ordinary life is framed as small, repetitive, and constrained. The jackpot is framed as infinite, expansive, and liberating. The sharper the contrast, the stronger the pull. This is why Powerball content thrives during periods of economic stress. When people feel boxed in, the fantasy of instant freedom becomes more compelling, not less. Critics often argue that this content is misleading, but that misses the deeper point. The audience already understands the odds at some level. What they are buying is not belief. It is relief. Relief from feeling stuck. Relief from responsibility. Relief from having to plan. For a brief moment, the ticket allows people to outsource hope to randomness. And randomness feels fairer than systems that feel rigged. Powerball hard-pitching content doesn't promise control. It promises surrender. Surrender to chance. Surrender to possibility. Surrender to the idea that something external might finally intervene. That is incredibly attractive in a world where effort does not always correlate with reward. This is also why Powerball content often centers on transformation rather than money itself. Stories focus on quitting jobs, helping family, disappearing from stress, starting fresh. The numbers are just symbols. The real product is identity change. Who would you be if you didn't have to worry anymore? Hard pitch content forces that question into the viewer's mind over and over again. The ethical tension here is real. This kind of content amplifies desire without offering guidance. It encourages imagination without grounding. But its persistence tells us something uncomfortable about modern society. People are not drawn to Powerball because they are foolish. They are drawn to it because many traditional paths to security feel blocked or slow. When progress feels inaccessible, miracles become attractive. Powerball hard-pitching content doesn't create that feeling. It exploits it. And platforms amplify it because it performs. High engagement, high emotion, high urgency. Algorithms reward intensity, and Powerball delivers it consistently. The content doesn't need to evolve much because the underlying conditions haven't changed. People still feel pressure. They still feel fatigue. They still want out. As long as those conditions exist, hard-pitch Powerball content will remain effective. What makes this phenomenon worth examining isn't whether people should or shouldn't play. It's what the success of this pitch reveals about collective psychology. It reveals how desperate people are for sudden change. It reveals how little faith many have in gradual improvement. It reveals how powerful imagination becomes when reality feels narrow. Powerball is not the only place this strategy appears. The same hard-pitch framework shows up in viral finance content, get-rich-quick schemes, extreme self-help promises, and overnight success stories. Powerball is simply the most socially accepted version of the fantasy because it's legal, because it's normalized, because it's familiar. But the mechanics are the same. Create urgency, amplify desire, downplay odds, frame participation as normal, sell transformation, not process. That is the hard pitch. And it works because it speaks to something very human, the need to believe that one moment could undo years of struggle. Whether that belief is healthy or harmful depends on how it's held. As a brief escape, it can feel harmless. As a substitute for agency, it becomes dangerous. Powerball content lives right on that edge. It gives people hope, but not direction. It gives them fantasy, but not tools. It gives them possibility, but not control. And yet, it continues to thrive because hope without effort is still hope. That is the uncomfortable truth. The reason Powerball hard-pitching content will never disappear is because it fills a gap that modern systems leave open. A gap between effort and reward, between work and security, between patience and payoff. Until that gap closes, people will keep reaching for miracles. And content that sells miracles at full volume will always find an audience. This is not about shaming participation. It's about understanding why the pitch is so powerful, so persistent, and so revealing. Because when millions of people pause their lives to imagine a different one, even briefly, that tells us something important. It tells us that the desire for escape is no longer fringe. It's mainstream, and Powerball is simply the loudest voice giving it permission. This has been InfoTrend, where we don't just talk about what people are watching, we talk about why they're hoping,